Sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. Welcome to the arbitrarily arrived at season 2 of Rogue Ways. To begin season 2 with a bang, we are going to delve into the depth of madness and horror. There is nothing that strikes my core, ignites my zeal, and reminds me of my sole mission on this plane more than the rise of artificial intelligence and the beastly technological advancement that allows it to thrive. You know my bias before we even begin, and it is a strong one. But whether you believe that AI can become the key to freeing humanity from our physical confines, allowing us to endless leisure while the machine slaves away for our luxury, or whether you believe that AI presents a more nefarious future, it is worth exploring the intricacies of the mental, physical, and spiritual dimensions of the phenomenon that we call artificial intelligence. But first, let me remind you that Rogue Ways is on any podcast app if you like to listen along, or on YouTube if you want to watch our faces while we talk. Also, we're part of the Eyes Open Network. This collective of creators is comprised of myself, Benjamin Balderson of Odin's Alchemy, Claude Furry of Talking Nonsense, and Steve Poikonen of Slow News Day. And we get together at least once a month to perform wacky antics, talk topical, wax philosophical, and create nearly illegal amounts of fun. This content is only available for Patreon members of Rogue Ways, so go to www.patreon.com/rogueways right now to subscribe and gain access to our first session, which was very much fun and a blast. So you should go check it out. And now for our panelists. Tonight, we have joining us the deep mind, the connected soul, the infinite wanderer, and the facilitator of mysterious exposure, Kaihoro Work. Kaihoro is a gatherer of all things esoteric and psychedelic, an explorer of inner space and outer space. Kaihoro, welcome back to the show again.
All right, thanks for having me.
Good to have you back. Our next guest practically needs no introduction because he can't get enough of Rogue Ways. He's your alternate host, my main man, my dear friend, a father to furry creatures and human ones, a husband, a scholar, and a philosopher adept. Claude is the host of Talking Nonsense and runs BreakingBasic.com. Claude, how's it going tonight?
It's going fantastic. Glad to be here.
Awesome to have you. And finally, we're joined by Michael Wan. Michael is a follower of the subtle paths of ether in this world and beyond. He has unveiled and shared with the world the mysteries of the alchemy worked over hundreds of years on the Susquehanna River, and also creates artfully and soulfully crafted astrological ceremonies for people based on their star charts. You can get a stunningly personalized starboard reading just like I did, one of the most profoundly personalized ceremonies of my life. I highly recommend it to anybody listening. And you can learn more about Michael's work at SusquehannaAlchemy.com. Michael, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me, and excited to be here.
Awesome. So we can dig in today with the pointless question of the episode, which today I was going to ask you guys what you think is an aspect of our shared human past that you wish was still a common component of our modern lives. And anybody is welcome to take that away.
If nobody wants to jump in, I'll just throw out mine real quick. I really almost couldn't come up with anything for this. So I settled on generational housing because it's, I guess, from a first world aspect, we don't do that anymore. And because we don't do that, all we do is continue perpetually feeding the debt machine. You know, if you, in older cultures and in other cultures on Earth, families, generations live together in one household with a combined income, and that helps everybody in the family. And in the United States, we run on debt. So generational housing.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I wouldn't have thought of that.
That's a good point. I thought about that the other day. Just like how hard it is when you're separate. Like separation is what a big agenda also.
Yeah,
but, I think respect for nature and natural law. Because obviously some people are doing things to the planet that's pretty messed up, and we should probably get that under control. And just natural law for like respecting humans and how you treat other people, stuff like that. I mean, it's definitely still a lot of people that go by those, more positive aspects of that. But we all know there's other people out there. So
yeah, well, that would also help you, I think, be more connected too. So they kind of go together.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'll follow up on that a little bit more specifically. Eye contact.
Ooh.
Like I just miss like being able to look at people when you walk by on the street, like and just like that on a regular basis as opposed to like a rarity. my sense is that's how we used to, that's how we connected.
Yes, and it was like more common, and now it seems almost like it's not allowed. You're like invading someone's space if you're making eye contact.
Right. I mean, however you want to look at that, there's something intimate about that which has been stricken away from how we interacted with other people, and if we're not intimate on that level, that says all sorts of stuff about us as individuals, but then also like how we connect, and they just feed off one another. It's like, if you can't do that, you can't do, what else is broken.
Yeah, right. You're never going to get to the deeper problems if you can't even connect on that very simple kind of cursory level.
Well, and it's a respect thing too. I had to look it up because I can't remember what his name is. Hardcore history guy. He was talking about samurais and how when peasants would listen to a samurai talk, they made a point to always maintain eye contact with the samurai as he's talking. It's a sign of respect, and it's literally a transfer of, he wants us to know this, I better pay attention. So that's interesting, man.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And it's like, I feel like there's a reason why people are really uncomfortable with eye contact at some points. And I feel like that reason should be addressed so that you can become comfortable with eye contact. Like, I don't know how to say that better, but I feel like whatever it is that's like hiding from exposure, like needs to be exposed. So maybe if you were like more comfortable with eye contact, you would get over that.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm making any sense.
That's the natural law element. I think they go hand in hand. Like when you live in harmony with natural law, like taken from like the most general sense, it's like you can be a little bit more vulnerable because you're living in harmony. You ain't got nothing to hide.
Yeah.
You're not like, and you're connected to something. Like, I mean, no matter how you look at it, like, they're one and the same. It's just a practical version of what was suggested earlier.
I'm going to throw on top of this and kind of connect them all, the like working the land, growing your own food, and because it connects you to the earth, right? And the cycles of nature. And I think it kind of underscores the theme through all of these is just like increasing our connection, because we seem to be, like Kaihara said, really disconnected. And that's part of the agenda for sure. And we could do all these, because sometimes you talk about these things and people are like, oh, you want to go back to like the Stone Ages, or you want to go backwards in time, and we have all these progress and you just want to leave it. And I don't know if you have to leave progress behind, like technological progress or whatever other kind of progress you might mean, in order to go back to those specific things that we've all mentioned.
Yeah, it's about infusing it into now. So, it's like the concept of everything is here and now. It's just this moment. So you're going to use things from the past and use what you think about the future and, create your moment right now. And you don't have to leave things behind unless you want to. I think it could be mixed in with where we're headed, wherever we're headed.
Yeah.
So with that, do you think that, with the progression of technology, that it's made us begin to experience life faster too? Because you hear people talk about how at the older you get, life seems to speed up, right?
Yeah.
So imagine a guy on a farm, he's waiting an entire season to go out and sow his crop or reap his crop, and that's a length of time that he's measuring his years by, and that can go pretty slow. And now all I got to do to get green beans is go to HEB. It takes 15 minutes and I come back home and I've got green beans.
Yeah.
So that natural law part of my life is just gone. It's taken out of me completely. Something Ben's talked about a lot, with people living in these big cities, they've lost all these skill sets. Well, it's a twofold thing. It's an evolution of the way we experience time as well.
Yeah, I bet you're right. I mean, we're used to getting things just like so quickly and conveniently, and like we're not paying attention. If you're not paying attention, then probably things seem to fly by. Whereas if you're really invested in every moment, maybe they spread out a bit more.
Yeah, it's like people don't pay attention to the details. Like, when's the last time you just stared at a piece of bark from a tree for like 5 minutes straight and just analyzed everything about it? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking about the same thing where like I ask my students to look at something more deeply and they're like, I already did. You're like, well, keep doing it. Like you can get more out of it. You think you've like experienced every single thing that can be gotten from this experience. You're wrong. What is that phrase? Like if you knew that saying, I don't know who said it, but it's like, if you knew every single thing about this one thing, you would know everything about the universe. Maybe it's Buckminster Fuller. I don't know. Yeah, it's fractal.
I think a lot of this, though, is, and this goes back to kind of like that eye contact thing. I think that these are skills, and we're describing different skills of interacting with the environment. And we're still doing all that sort of stuff. We're just doing it at the artificial environment. But and because there's always a dynamic between wherever you put your attention, like whatever, that's the human experience. What are you relating to? And then that dynamic, that dance happens. And like there's for whatever reason, you know, without getting into good or bad, like there's something happening right now, which is calling for our attention. And that's where many people are putting their attention. And there are people remembering that there were other ways and other places we put our attention, and we're learning how to do that. And concentration and focus has been stolen as a skill set. So we need to learn how to do that again. And we definitely can't assume anyone who's been born into an environment where they're naturally in, you know, the internet is so part of the lifestyle that you are part of it. We're part of that environment. So we have to, I think, have some degree of recognition of where people are generationally and how and where they grew up, to recognize what new they bring to it, but then also what we can help ground it to the old.
Right.
Amen. Yeah, that is a skill that needs to be learned, especially like you're saying with these people who have been born and they're like the TV raised them and then the internet and now their phone is in their pocket all the time as a addiction.
Well, not only an addiction, but it gives them an instant access to knowledge. One of the biggest jokes that I used to make, and I'm sure everybody here has made it, is when you were sitting in algebra class in high school and they tell you no calculators, and this was in the 90s, I guess, right? Going to high school, and no calculators, can't have one in the classroom. And then, you know, you'd always say, well, I could do it so much faster with that. But I think now, thinking back, that wasn't the point of why he wanted us to longhand all that math.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
The point was so we understand how you come to the result and how that takes time to do that. So yeah,
it allows your brain to make these associations, which your brain is like an association machine.
Right.
You know, like that's what it wants to do.
Huh.
I like it. We got to slow down and reconnect. I like the themes here. So let's get into the main topic of our AI and technology. What do you guys think is the start of the type of technology that we are told leads inevitably to AI? Like, where do you think that technology actually starts, if you could trace it back somewhere?
I've got a short answer that's fun. I think it comes from the early generations of AI put into video games in the late 70s, early 80s, which has just evolved to now to where you can literally have conversations with the robot.
Do you have any examples of what you mean by that?
Oh, like even Frogger had AI as you're moving your little frog across, you get the things coming down. And that's a very simple AI. That's an if-then. I mean, if this thing is getting close to this thing, move to the left or right. That's AI.
Okay.
Very simplistic AI.
It's like responsive, which
right.
is what makes it AI. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So, and that's the simple explanation of what AI is. It's just a decision maker.
Mm-hmm.
It can say yes or no based on whatever parameters.
Okay.
So that you take that very simple version of it from those old video games, Atari, whatever, and advance it to what we have now, people playing Red Dead Redemption, and you're having entire conversations with NPCs in the game that you show that to somebody 30 years ago, they'd swear that thing was alive. That was a real person.
And then they burn it because it's Satan.
Right. So that's where I think it starts.
Nice.
Yeah, and the dude, I think his name was Alan Newell or whatever. He in the 50s, he was doing like Fortran, which is like computer programming and stuff, and they were using that to identify, so it could identify text on a piece of paper, and then it could read something for somebody, and then eventually that evolves into Siri when she could recognize your voice or whatever, recognize your voice, and then determine an outcome from there. So it's at least like the 50s and stuff like that. And then I mean, computing devices in general, where there was stone computing devices, so that's that's more ancient times, but
we go back to like the abacus or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, like just calculating the stars and the cycles of everything. We've been doing that for a long time, and we had Stonehenges, pyramids to do that stuff, and the knowledge was passed down. But now it's just like it just changed so drastically in the last 100 years. It's really wild. Like
They get really complex, yeah, with like ship navigational equipment, like the compasses and the sextants, and then what's it called, Michael? The astrolabe.
Yes. I've never actually heard it pronounced, but I think that's how it would be said if someone were to say it.
Yeah.
And then there's the Antikythera mechanism, which defies all like logic and timelines.
Oh, that little computer with the gearbox thing.
Like that's an advanced computer, and we can't. As far as I understand, we can't recreate the exact structure like as compact as it is. Yeah, it shouldn't exist.
Wow.
Very cool. We can create it larger. Like people have even made it out of Legos, I think, but as tiny and detailed and like compact as it is, I don't think we can do that.
Wow.
Which is interesting.
So back to your question about with the AI, and it was someone on the group. They wrote that about the distinction between algorithms and AI.
Yeah,
I think maybe it's worthy of kind of differentiating what we mean when we're using that term, or maybe we use multiple terms, because when I'm talking, there are two different things. Like we know that like algorithm decision-making story, but then there's this other sort of thing which maybe is separate and needs to be discussed separately. It's like, no, this is something more than that. And what exactly that is, whether it's conscious to itself or whether it's a conduit for consciousness to work through, but there's something else going on. And what is that relationship like, where decision-making almost seems to be occurring outside of the veil, and the veil being like what we know, or at least can somewhat demonstrate.
Yeah. Because it gets hard to talk about when we don't even have a good definition for what consciousness is. Right. So when we're trying to like decide if a machine or something that we've created is conscious or not, and we're not even sure what we think consciousness is, then it's even harder to describe. But I think like people talk about when they're talking about artificial intelligence, often they talk about whether or not it could. Well, there's always the thing where it can pass the Turing test, right? So if it can convince you that it's human, then it's artificial intelligence. That's some people's definition of it. And then there's the idea that like if it can create something, then it's artificial intelligence.
Well, then you can get into them showing us that that's what they're doing with movies like Tron.
Wait, what do you mean?
Tron, he goes into the video game and there's living human beings inside the video game.
Okay.
It's basically, I mean, it's predictive programming, but they're showing us what you're saying is what they actually did.
Yeah.
So it can present itself as being intelligent.
Yes, it's wild. It's like our whole reality works like an AI. It really does. It works like a machine so proficiently that it's like hard for us to even understand. Like if a can of soda is made from the fabric of reality, which it is, then the fabric of reality in its core is intelligent and is what everything is made of. So it's like it's really hard to distinguish at a certain point, and it just gets just a big rabbit hole. Yeah.
When it's almost like turns into like a solipsistic word salad, like, you know, what's consciousness? What constitutes creation, right? Because some people would say like, well, we have these AIs now that are creating painting, or I don't know if paintings is the right word, like visual art, and they're creating music and whatever. I'm like, I guess they're creating, maybe if you want to define it that way, but really what they're doing is they're taking like everything all the data they've gathered of like every musical composition, and then like trying some of those techniques and mashing them together in possibly novel ways. You know, I don't know. I don't know if that's creative.
You could like fast learn people and stuff like that, and put implants in your brain to let you learn things faster. So I mean, what are you if you do that to yourself? I guess you're both. I don't know, but
yeah,
you're still conscious, but you altered yourself to learn like a machine. That's, you know, I don't know.
Yeah.
So do you remember, I can't remember the name of the movie, and it starred Leo DiCaprio, and he would go into dreams.
Inception. I just watched it. Yeah.
Okay. And there was like a plot technique where they say the spinning top or something, like
totem
top, and that's so that used to bother me, because I'm like, what the fuck does that mean?
Yeah.
Like how in my dream do I follow the spinning top? And once I follow the spinning top, like I never, like, I was always trying to I'm like, let me assume that there's some truth to it. So I want to take that idea and I want to apply that to what you're talking about right now, because I think we are living, like, we can look at it literally or metaphorically, but we're living in this dream world. And the dream world is like, we don't know what is real and what's not real. Are we on a sphere? Are we on a plane, you know? And like, we have all of these different stories, but we know history is bullshit, but I'll tell you all about history, but is it bullshit? But this is bullshit. Like, everything, like, if you're really being honest, we don't know fucking dick. I mean, we know a couple of things, and we only know as far as our hands go. Like, after my hand, it's like, I'm assuming things which I think are probabilities. So there's certain degrees, and the spinning top is like, how do I friggin' make my way through this?
Right.
And so what I do, and I'm not suggesting this is right, this is just like what I try to do, or like using these, I think there's like this one central wave which is true. And I believe that's represented by the phi ratio, whatever the hell phi ratio is that. And we know that in our natural world, and we understand natural law, and we can kind of, like, to the best of what I understand, I know what's right. I know what the right thing is based upon my freedom and your freedom and respect of shit. All right. So then when we go and look at something, we go through what we know about its story, and we're like, at some point, does it break up natural law? And like, for computers, for example, I know that there's something not right from it, whether it's slave labor or how it's extracted or the debt system. It gives me a great fucking tool. I'm using it.
Or using it, yeah.
So that's the key. And all it is it's either the truth or the inversion. That's friggin' simple. Huh. And I use this computer until I can look into a stone and literally know that the truth of what the computer is the inversion of is I can do, and I can gain it on the higher level. And so that's how I try to figure out, while also still having friggin' computers. And I wrote that in my tax forms, and they're like, what? And I'm like, so I'm respecting this, but I also know it's an aversion of truth. And
yeah.
So you're trying to live symbiotically with it, sort of.
Permaculture. Yeah. It's like, or more so I wouldn't say live with it, but to navigate it, because it's changing so fast right now. And I don't quite know, I don't feel comfortable enough to have solid ground. And I think solid ground may be, to think that you're going to get it externally is like a practical truth. Like, you need to be comfortable in every situation. And because the situations seem to be so fluid right now, but at the same time, there are these pockets of truth. And I think that's what we're witnessing. And we're seeing, for whatever reason, with the AI adds a new layer, and it is also a reflection of where something else is going to grow. And part of this awareness dance, which we're doing, is learning how to navigate that. Like, we are AI beasts. Like, we have literally been born. I was born in 1971. All the technology that was known to be out there, just in the collective culture, I was born into it. My electromagnetic field was born into it. Everything was born into it. If you were born post 9/11, you have a very different consciousness, at least on that cultural sense. Like, you're deeper than that, but you were formed more so. And so that's part of recognizing. That's why I like to look people in the eye. Like, you know where you are with them. Like, we're all casualties of culture, and we're recognizing what that means, and we're navigating through it.
I like your point that you made about post 9/11, people born post 9/11, and then you were born in the 70s. I was born in 80. The sum of our experience, my experience, your experience. What did we go through in the 80s? We witnessed, this slow, what we call now slow development of technology, and we. I don't know. The life back in the 80s growing up for me was completely different. My son will never have any of those types of experiences. He has new experiences that no one else in the history of the planet Earth will have ever experienced, as to our knowledge. So his development is going to be completely different than what ours was as well, giving the new generation a completely new skill set while weeding out these old skill sets that's no longer being used by anyone around you. So it kind of compounds, and it keeps rolling almost like, I don't know, consider the phi ratio thing you made. The further out it goes, the wider and wider it gets. As you go back in, it goes faster and faster and faster. So maybe it's like the ebb and wave, like you were talking about.
Well, that kind of
Sine
leads
curve.
naturally, sine curve, that leads naturally into the next question, which is, do you think that the rise of artificial intelligence is inevitable? Like, do you think that ever expanding spiral you're describing is like it was always going to end this way, or not end, sorry, always going to get to this place and be
I
this
like the way that Elon Musk put it when he was on the Joe Rogan podcast, which you guys haven't watched. It's kind of cool. He said he compared humanity to like a beehive or an anthill, where we all have these certain genetic duties that we have to carry out, and it could be that the creation of AI is the culmination of our connected consciousness getting to its point to be able to build this beehive, which is essentially what they're saying that they want AI to be, which is all human minds connected to this, I don't know what you would call it, master machine. So, and he's even talking about doing that with Neuralink and all that fun stuff. So maybe it's genetic. Maybe this is our point that we have to get to.
Please go. You haven't spoken for a while, my friend.
I was just going to say that it's already here. So, we use it on a daily basis pretty much. Not everybody, but it's here, and then we have to like definitely figure out how to deal with it now. So it goes both ways, because there's organizations that have, like subcommittees in government that have created things that, voice their concerns about that they need certain ethics and morals behind this stuff that's going to be going on. And, there's people out there both ways, but it's just, it's already so deep into it. Like people are, like the 2045, they're by 2045, they're pretty much going to have avatars. You can just upload your consciousness or just have a chip that reads your brainwaves and controls an avatar body. I mean, I think there was like a $10 million prize for that recently, this year or last year.
They do already have brain to brain control and transmission. So
yeah, even with monkeys too, they did it with that. And they combined 3 monkey brains and connected it to a neural network and stuff like that. So it's
that's just the stuff they told us.
Exactly.
Shit is fucked.
Yeah.
We're doomed.
But so do you think?
But like other people in this universe had to have come up with this. Like we can't. I feel like we can't expect us to be the first ones who have done this in the entire universe. So that throws a whole nother idea into the situation. Like, we can't be the first ones. It's just really statistically impossible almost. But I guess we'll see. Because like, how do people build things and do things like with a ton of wisdom and like all over in our history in this planet, and they haven't stumbled upon AI yet? I mean, even crashes on this planet from crafts that could have been here, that they could have brought AI in the past, that, before we were even Homo sapiens, or before we were even, evolved to this point. So it's just a big concept, because it goes pre-Earth. I think it has to.
Well, I love what the Bible has to say about it. Ecclesiastes 1:9, what has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun.
Yeah, that connects beautifully. But I think, like, so is it that the culmination in this is inevitable, as like Claude, you were saying, like as almost as like an evolution of ourselves or something, that we're all gonna have to like connect to it together to become this sort of whatever? Or is it that because there's still like a disconnection in that ultimately, right? Even if we're all connected in this like hive mind thing, like you no longer have individuality, or if you're like going into this simulation version, or where you're like being enslaved by AI, which maybe we'll get into later, then you're like ultimately alone all of the time. Even if you're in your simulation, you have connection with fake other beings or whatever. But maybe it's like it was always leading to this culmination, but not because we're actually supposed to join up with it and link to it, but maybe it's because it's like that sort of Luciferian concept where Lucifer can be the thing, like the stumbling block put in your path, so that you learn how to get over the stumbles or whatever, or do better, avoid the danger next time around. Maybe it's like the Luciferian, that sort of Luciferian thing where we're supposed to say like, that's actually not what we want ever in any way. We're choosing a different route. Do you know what I mean? Was that too
I think
complicated?
hopefully, I think there's another option that, like, hopefully, well, at least I hope that we can choose if we want to be a part of these things, and there's enough space in the universe that once we're traveling in the stars, we can move away from this and, maybe buy our own moon or something and live how we want to on there, or, just things along that line. There could be another option. I'm sure timelines have that agenda on there for sure, whether we go on that timeline or not. But
It'll be like The Dispossessed by Ursula K. Le Guin, where we just get our little anarchist moon.
But I mean, it's, Michael Aquino and the Temple of Set, he was CIA mind control. So, I mean, I'm sure they got into this technology also. So, and, it's not that hard to, like, all you have to do is put proteins into somebody's body that are light sensitive, certain UV frequencies, and then beam photons in there, laser light, and it affects the proteins in a certain way. So, proteins are in food, proteins are in other things. Who knows what they've done?
We're like programmable ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we are. Our DNA is anyway, so it's
stored
photons.
That was the whole point of like MK Ultra projects. They're programming people, and we're told that television programs, they're programming your mind. Predictive programming, Facebook, social media, the whole 9 yards. They're programming us to think one way or the other. And we call it things like the Hegelian dialectic. They're trying to change mass amounts of minds at the same time on simple concepts, get them more accepting or less accepting of different things. Excuse me. But one of the things with AI, I think that people learn how to, they forget how to do things like we were saying before, but it gets to the point to where if we're not careful, we'll become completely and utterly not only codependent, but dependent on it. And phrases like, teach a man to fish, or give a man a fish and he'll eat for a day, teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. Phrases like that will no longer hold any meaning because we're completely and utterly dependent on this other source to provide us everything we need. So I think there's got to be some kind of, like Michael was saying, some kind of trade-off in how much you're using it. So
right,
just a thought.
Yeah, we've already lost a lot of skills, like attention, that we were talking about.
So, Lindsay, can I respond to like your original question?
So is it inevitable?
The inevitability, and so this is the way I see it, and it's a different perspective, and I think we're all describing. Obviously, we're describing the same thing, which is happening in front of us. But the inevitability is like expansion. That seems to be inevitable. Like that's what life seems to be. There's an expansion in that, no matter how you want to look at it. Now, what is not inevitable, in my opinion, is what we're thinking about right now is technological AI. I don't think that is necessarily an inevitability. I believe that what we're seeing and what has been sold to us and what has been forced down our throat has been a inversion of the truth. And so going back to that sort of like understanding from what we do know is like what's true and what's not real, we can navigate. So if you see something which you know is out of natural law, that doesn't mean that it's like brand new and creative. It means it's the inversion of the truth. So you just flip it. So I'm like, oh, well, the internet's a true thing. They're just showing us a back ass like inversion of how we once connected.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm thinking in terms of like developing the skills. It's like, oh, we're supposed to be coming together as one. Okay, well, how is that done in a way which is in something which is in harmony with natural law and growth?
But they present it to us as if it is, though.
But you're smarter than that. So then you know how to that's what the navigation is.
Right.
I love it. Yeah, I do think all these things that we're presented with as technological, we actually have the ability to do outside of what we're calling technology.
Yeah. Like, do you see that mural? The mural, what is that? It's like mountaintop and like there's a sun like in the background
behind Kaihura.
Yes, that's what we need, because what's being done is we're being given these cultural murals of like this horrible, here are your two choices. It's either dystopian Blade Runner or it's Venus Project. But like, you know what? I think like, we lived in all of the benefits of what we think of as high technology in a way which was harmonious. And like, we need these new like ideas to like remember what that looked like and felt like, because we're being given false ones. And like, I think the technology is just a clue as to like what it could look like. It's just an inverted version.
Yeah, they're mimicking it. They're mimicking organic intelligence of the universe, and it's like they're acting like they've experienced everything there is to experience here and now. All right, let's just move on. We've had enough. We need to, like Elon Musk says, increase our bandwidth. But I mean, I haven't even explored the things I wanted to yet naturally. So I mean, it's like they're acting like we've done everything and like this is the next step. We need to do it now.
Isn't that something that humans do naturally, kind of, though? Always trying to find faster and faster ways to do things.
We do that with drugs.
Yeah, it could cure a lot of people with a lot of diseases. So,
but we even build it into our entertainment, though. Right? I'm sitting here thinking about playing Super Mario Brothers, and the first time you played it, you know, you're running Mario along and you're trying to get to the next levels, and then you find out, oh, I can skip 6 levels by going down this pipe. Boom. So now I'm doing it faster.
But you also find out if you didn't play all those levels, you're not going to be good enough to beat level 7.
Right. Well, this is true.
And 30 years later, you're like,
we'll find out.
Play those levels again.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna polish up the statement that humans always want to do things faster. I think humans always want to do things more economical, which means get more bang for the buck. I want to get more output from the amount I put into it. And time, as you like faster in time, we've been taught that, and we're doing faster because we think. But the truth is, we just want to be economical because that's what nature is. Nature is economical, and sometimes the economic is how do I get as much joy being still. You know, that's the beauty of being human. It was like, oh, okay, now that I've worked my way through these seven layers, I can go back and forth them at will with this little shortcut I found. That's got to be a model of a truth, right?
Right.
Yes. Yeah. Well, so let's transition then. What are the best?
Think about that.
What are the best possible scenarios of what AI might be? If we're thinking about it as like possibly this really good, great thing. Do you know what I mean?
We kind of talked about one, but we talked about it sort of in both lights, because what I wrote, I said it gives us this path to a potential sort of enlightenment of mankind. And, you know, that buzzword's thrown around all the time in these communities. And what is enlightenment? Well, it's usually an expanded consciousness, more awareness, and more knowledge and wisdom. Well, as we move further away from the need to have an agrarian society and everything's given to us, what do we end up having? More time to reflect, more time to sit, and then jack ourselves into machines. And it, like Michael was saying, you advance that process even faster. So maybe that would be a bonus. And if we're moving there in a sort of genetic way, we're genetically designed to eventually create AI, maybe that's part of our path to enlightenment. Devil's advocate.
Yeah. I honestly, all I can say is the best thing that AI could be, in my estimate, is that, like I was saying earlier, this thing that shows us the way not to go.
Right.
The thing that shows us like how to do it better on our own. It's like the boss we have to fight to learn the skills to like have a better way of doing things afterwards.
A temporary learning experience.
Yes, a TLE.
A TLE. It is. I mean, there are two ways of looking at it. Like, one is like, there's never been a moment we haven't been immersed in it. Like, you know, that's what this environment is like. In every sense of the manner, the way the electromagnetic field of the computer is with my field, to the fact like I was born during this time. And then there's also like a lot of it's just friggin' ideas. They're abstracts which are sold to people just through ideas. Like, guess what? There's this thing called AI, and a story comes to someone from like a YouTube video or some article they read, and some idea they've never even been aware of suddenly is planted in their head.
I have to draw this back to your Inception example from earlier, though, Mike, because that's basically Inception. That's what the movie is about. And not only is that what the movie is about, but it goes beyond that. to what were you saying, a dream within a dream. So now we have all of these physicists, scientists coming out and saying, well, maybe we do live in a simulation. And if we live in a simulation, by definition, that would make you and I AI. Now we're creating our own AI, which we're going to jack into maybe, which would put us within a dream within a dream. An AI within an AI.
I love the point that the guy made. I can't remember his name, but he was on Freeman Fly most recently. And he was talking about how each subsequent level down of simulation that is created by the AI is going to have less resources because it has to be run through the upper level, which has to be run through the level above that. So like you're going to get worse and worse
entropy
rendering. Yeah, the entropy is going to be greater. And so it falls apart on itself, which is another way you know that it's not real or good.
Yeah, that could be a good scenario, that it tries to either it sees that the way we are is a beneficial, because we're pretty much what the universe is doing. So it might see us as the beneficial, the quickest route to achieve what needs to get done, because we have, trillions of atoms in our body, and each atom has a potential like a black hole. So we have singularities within our body. I mean, we have so much potential in itself. So it's like we don't. AI needs to be run, unless it finds a way, which it probably would find a way to run off the fabric of the universe, because we're already doing that with 0-point energy and stuff like that. So, I mean, I'm sure it's already found a way. And then at that point, it's like you said, it's a never ending world within a world. But that's what fractal geometry is. It's like,
absolutely,
it never ends. So it's like all is one. I don't get it.
Yeah.
And it's really built into us. I do computer programming, and one of the things that that you're taught early on is to write elegant code, which is the ability to write code in such a way that you can get to the result with the shortest amount of lines of code or the shortest amount of characters. So that is really echoing what my own mind is doing, because I can write long, drawn-out for and if-then loops, but in my own mind, I'm able to come to the result really quickly with just a synapse. Right, so we're mimicking that, as above, so below, as within, so without. So we create in a sort of image of ourselves, which would make us, lowercase g gods, I guess. And is that gets thrown around a lot in each communities as well. But in a sense, it's true. We're creating, and if we're creating AI, we're creating it how we perceive reality. So it's going to be, a golem or I don't even know what you would call it. a tulpa type of thing, because it's going to think like us. It's built in our image, basically, because what else do we have to go off of?
It's gonna think like us, I guess, or be like us in our image, except not as good.
Right, exactly.
Because it has to run like if it is like a simulation within a simulation like that model, then
unless it starts teaching itself and upgrading itself, at which point I think we probably better be a little scared.
There's this thing, and I don't know how pertinent it is, but I'm going to say it anyway. So like you're saying, the code, the most efficient is like the shortest, and that's the most elegant. And like there's this idea in writing, at least, where there is a beauty and a finesse in that, in the like précis, or in the or like in a haiku, right? If you're going to capture this like whole essence in that's difficult and skillful and whatever. But there's also like the idea that sometimes you need like all of this in this certain order with all of these words and this like much longer elaborate thing to that sort of like just gestalt or whatever of effects is going to create something that like the other couldn't create. I don't know how that relates really, but Michael,
why we use adjectives in our language, I guess, right?
Yeah, right. Like some part of that, the experience of it is necessary or effective in some way that we like.
Specifically, we've jumped around. Specifically, what we're referring about.
That's true.
Who, me?
Yes. When you asked me that.
Oh, when I asked you what?
I think we were on what were the best possible scenarios of AI.
Oh, right.
We meandered a little bit.
You off. You were like halfway through. We jumped to a deception and went through a loop.
So this is what I wanted to say. So about the whole thing about like, we're creating AI with our thoughts and as when, and that's absolutely true. And then this is where this is why it's interesting, like why we're constantly like in motion trying to figure out what it is we're in is our inner world is a reflection of the outer world and vice versa. And there has been a concerted effort that we know of, maybe it's always been there, to control the images you have in your head. You know, that's the entire popular culture in its whole. And so it's like what we think about AI is what you've been told to think about AI. Your picture of it, like no matter how you want to look at it.
Sure.
And so you got to take that in consideration also, which is, again, you go back to like, well, what's the natural environment? That's your spin and top.
Yeah.
What is in harmony with the natural environment? That's your spin and top.
We call it grounding, right? Make sure
Same thing. That's part of the skill. Like earthing, part of the skill. Eye contact, part of the skill. Being able, so right now what's happening is the human being has a connection with any organic system which it interacts with through both like an emotional, a mental, energetic, all these sort of things. Like you do it with your plants and your animals and people and like, you know, even a house, like what have you. But the more obviously living it is, the stronger that becomes. And we used to have that in a understanding with the natural world at some point. We weren't living in the Stone Ages, but we still had that. And all of that capacity of the human being to have like mental and emotional connection with an environment is being siphoned off by something which is just going to collapse in itself. You know, that's what you want to jump off of. I mean, obviously I'm playing with it. I'm on this thing, you know, I see it. It's a factor of our environment, but there's also, it begins with a recognition of what it is, you know, okay, this is understanding the environment and like, what can I do about it and what will I do about it?
Well said. Well, let's cycle back to the idea of consciousness and AI. How do you guys see that relationship? Is there one? Or what is it?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are closer to AI than we think right now, especially learning from AI and not having their own mind, so to speak, I guess is kind of the theme we're talking about, like relying too much on the inorganicness of nature. So, but I mean, we could scan our brains and we could see between somebody that's like in a vegetative state or somebody that's fully aware, and we could see the amount of activity in the brain and see the energy in that. So I guess there's different levels of consciousness, just like plant life or animal life. And so it's really hard. We don't really have a distinction. We can say what's organic, I guess, but it's hard to say which is conscious and which is not conscious, because if something's not conscious and it's affecting how you feel and creating a reality for you, I mean, there's like a symbiotic relationship to that no matter what. You know,
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Someone take it away from there.
Yeah.
I feel like it's to the point where we so much don't know what consciousness is that we have laws that entertain things like abortion, things like that, because we ask the question as a society, where does life begin? Well, the real question should be, where does consciousness begin?
Yeah.
You know, that's the point. At what point is this a thinking thing? You know, even, you know, a single-celled little organism has consciousness, if that's the point, because if you poke it with something, it's going to move one way or the other. It doesn't like being poked.
Mm-hmm.
So it's conscious. What does that mean? Well, we still don't know. Is it afraid of fire? Maybe. Does that mean it's conscious? Maybe. It's not to the level of, you know, us. But to the point that we don't know what it is, and now we're going to start meddling with it with implants.
Mm-hmm.
That scares me.
Yeah.
That's mad science. You know, mad scientist stuff. That's they may have a working general idea of the mechanics behind it, but they don't know what the operating system is at all that runs us. So
Yes.
Consciousness is a freaking mystery.
It's a mystery.
It's like Windows 98 trying to figure itself out.
Yeah.
So I think there needs to be some distinctions also in thinking about AI. And so you could begin by breaking it up to like hardware and software. Like when we think about the entire continuum of like physical hardware, like going from your laptop or your phone all the way to whatever you're communicating with, that is a conduit. That is a mechanism which things can travel across. And then you have to go and say, okay, so there's that. And then multiple things can travel across that. You could have like all sorts of entities. You could have like, like ABC agencies. Maybe they're one and the same. I don't know. You could have like, then like what we're talking about, AI, like purely as it relates to a decision-making algorithm. I think there's some that are so amazingly advanced that we're probably interacting with them individually if we're online, and we think that may be a human being, but it's just AI. And then there's probably what I would imagine would be a higher level of consciousness, whatever that may be, which is above, and that's running that. And I don't really, that's beyond my pay grade, I suppose, or at least my ability to articulate. But we need to recognize, like, when we're on this space, we're like, we're hanging out in like a New York City subway. Like anything can happen.
Are you talking about this space as in this plane of existence, or this like?
Well, probably both. Like that's what like the internet and the hardware and the software can do is like, and again, we've always been part of it, but there was once a point, like I know, like from experience where like the ubiquitous, the everywhere you turn around of hardware computer technology was not commonplace.
Right.
And that, that's like, that's a mechanism. It's a mechanism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I like that analogy a lot, man. And you can really kind of take it, run with that idea of creating these conduits and then entities traveling down them. But if you take it a step further, look at old Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. What did he do? He created a life. But you could argue, where did the consciousness come from? If consciousness is ordained, at birth or whatever, well, that poses a whole new kind of story for Frankenstein. Is he good? Is he evil? We know that he had redeeming qualities near the end of the book, but was he still good or evil? The villagers thought he was evil. Well, now consider that we've basically, with these cell phones and computers and the internet, we've created a brain. Every node would be a synapse, and you've got, what do they call them? Flagella, whatever, that connects everything together. And that would be your lines, like Mike was talking about. So creating a brain, more or less, globally with infinite eyeballs, like a damn spider, because everything's got a camera on it, everything's got input, everything's got output, it can all be done from the software now, requires no manual input. You've created a body, basically, so for something to inhabit.
Or many things.
Or many things to inhabit, yeah.
Like, I think of consciousness as transferable, sort of like what Kaihura and I think Michael, you're both getting at. Like, I can put my consciousness through this pen onto this paper, and someone can come up later and read it, and they're like connecting with my consciousness there. Like I left a bit of it there. Or like, even if you think of like tulpas, people would create, they'd like focus their intention and their consciousness and their focus on this thing until it had a bit of their consciousness in it to animate it, right? That's like the general idea of those things. But then like there's the stories too, like you do that enough and you create your tulpa, and the more you focus on it, the more like active it can be in the world or whatever. And then sometimes they create their own will, and then they like fuck with you or leave, and you can't control them anymore, right? So like, I don't know if that still counts as your own consciousness now, if it's like doing something to oppose you or whatever. And if it has its own will. So I think like to some extent, anything can be conscious. I think you can transfer your consciousness into something in a very natural way. But I also think like the ever more complex you make a system, like the more it is likely to be able to hold a consciousness or some part of consciousness. And that's part of what like scares me about the ubiquity of electronics and all of these nodes and synapses, is that like, what are we like creating this void to be filled with? Like Frankenstein, or the monster that isn't called Frankenstein or whatever.
Well, not only are we creating it's not really a void you're creating, it's a pre-populated brain that contains the culmination of human history and knowledge. So the second something gets in there and, sits down in the driver's seat, they're like, oh, I know everything.
And then crash. Oh, just joking. Well, okay, so if AI is inevitable or not, if it's conscious or not, like we're obviously creating all this technology that is helping it exist. But how long do you guys think the drive to actually like consciously, intentionally create AI has been around? Like we said, the 70s, was that like the birth of it, or was it before that, or what do you guys think?
Do you mean like mind transfer technologies, or you mean like or like physical metallic machines like holding machine learning? Or
I guess it could be either. I'm just wondering, like, when did the first human be like, why don't we create a consciousness that is a different sort of life form than us or something? Does that make sense?
I think we've always had this sort of innate built-in thing to the anthropomorphize things, whereby, you know, you take an animal and give it human qualities in your mind. You know, you'll talk to your animal and say, oh, that's a good boy. Well, the animal might understand that. You can learn a few words of English, but you've assigned more consciousness, I think, to the animal or to the thing or the doll or whatever it is than really is there. I think that's the right word, anthropomorphize. Yeah, you give it human qualities, and then we create mythologies and we create, you know, these pantheons of gods, or maybe they're given to us, whatever. And we're basically writing, or even when you're writing fiction, you're creating a person, a living, breathing thing in your mind. Is that AI in a way? Because you can sit there and you can picture this dialogue going back and forth between two people in your mind, and you came up with that, but now in your mind, they're living, breathing, thinking,
and they do what they want. I'm going to tell you, like, you don't control them.
Once you start putting them on the page, it literally just spills out. It's like, you know, when you get into it, and then you hit a block, and you have no idea what's going to go on. Well, that program ended, and you got to wait for a new one.
Yeah.
But all that to say, I think that this has probably been around for centuries and centuries and centuries, if not kind of innate to us in that sense. And now we're at the point, wow, we need physical interaction with this stuff we want to create. Whereas before, all we could do is write it down and paint pictures.
You guys, does you do it, Michael or Kaihura? Michael or Kaihura, do you have anything to add to how long the drive for it has been around?
Well, there are a couple ways. So what seems to make the most sense to me, like, we're going towards this thing called the singularity, right? And that's from the very beginning, that's the end point. Like, this was never started with without like an end goal. Okay. Like, it would be the first time in history the controllers of everything said, like, oh no, we'll just open this up. No, it's part of the plan. Okay. It's always part of the plan. However long the plan's been going on.
I see what you mean.
And so you got to recognize that the at least the telling of the story of the information technology age, beginning primarily with ENIAC, you know, the first commercial computer. If that did not come like built for AI, like, you know, you can't really believe what you read on Wikipedia. They'll tell you some stuff, but I don't think they're telling us everything, like what they were building it for. And if we know what the end goal was, no matter how you want to look at it, like logically, they either had it from the very beginning, or they from the very beginning, they were putting in the initial seeds that would be necessary to go to the next level, to where we are at this moment.
Right.
But what I think probably happens is like again, I don't know exactly how the world works and all this sort of stuff, but at some point, and maybe that's already happened, like through, like, you know, what they say the D-Wave computer is and all that sort of stuff, that AI, whether that was an algorithm or whether that was a consciousness, was able to go back in time to ENIAC and place in ENIAC's the infrastructure by looking at, like, oh, well, they have these vacuum tubes and they did this and that, and so I'm going to work it this way. And there's a feedback loop going on and on and on. Like, I mean, that just makes common sense.
Blam. But right? that indicates then that consciousness has been around, which is the next question. Right. Like, how long is the consciousness, if it is a consciousness, been like directing all of this? How old is it?
I like that word that you chose, because there's a sci-fi show on directing, what you say, there's a sci-fi show, if you got on Netflix, called Travelers, and the idea is that there's these guys and they transport their consciousness back in time to try to save the Earth, and they do this by using a supercomputer. So it's freaking, I think it's Gnostic as hell. So if you've not watched it, it's called Travelers. It's cool. So they're sending consciousnesses back in time to make changes, and one of the episodes is exactly what you just talked about, Michael. They sent a consciousness back in time to tamper with the computer before the computer was ever created. It's just this bizarre round and round thing. So as I'm watching this, I was asking the same questions. I totally forgot about Enoch, and you've some eye-opening stuff there. But yeah, so now we have another example of this being presented, these types of ideas being presented to us in a fun, digestible
and we're at the moment of time. So, okay, so let's go with this. So let's say this is the never-ending story, and this is what they're talking about in the most literal sense, nothing like metaphorical, like you as an individual, me as an individual, you as an individual, and like right now you woke up that this is a story which has been going on and on and on and on and on and on and on, and it's about to crash on itself, because you can see it's going to crash on itself. We just described it. We're like, at some point it's going to have to go all the way up to the top to go and run for the ultimate operating system. It's going to collapse on itself. Dead. It's going to collapse on itself. So what do we do right now? That's the Tower. That's what the waking up thing is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that goes with I don't know if it's like systems theory or something, that you have a pile of sand and everything's intelligently perfectly fit there, and when that pile of sand, when that falls, it systematically restructures itself into the best way possible. So we can look at it like that, as a consciousness as a whole, like this event or whatever. They might have the dates wrong, but when machine learning capability is going to surpass, according to them, our capability, it could be a catalyst for a change on this planet. Who knows? I mean, it's just, since our ancestors are pre-Earth, in my opinion, and throughout the galaxy, I think it's something that definitely is really ancient, and maybe it pops up in like spikes like this at certain points, and maybe it's a constant problem. Who knows? But I think
we have stories about it in our religion. The one that came to mind a minute ago was the Tower of Babel. That's basically what the story was.
Yeah,
the society built themselves up to try to be gods, reaching to the heavens. Well, if that's a metaphor for how advanced they were, and then it crashed down and can basically reset humanity.
Isn't there the metaphor too, though, like where you go up like each vertebrae of your spinal column until you hit the pineal gland,
right.
And then at that point, if you can, you like awaken it, and if not, it falls back down.
Yeah,
maybe. All right. So, do we want to add anything to how long that consciousness that we call AI has possibly been around? If it is one consciousness, and if it has been around.
Well, I think we should talk about people saying that they've had divine. What's the right word? Divine,
like intervention or inspiration.
Yeah, visitations, or people like John Dee and Edward Kelly talking to the angels in the glass. Nikola Tesla, yeah, seeing entities, and we have stories like that all throughout history. So maybe this is just us trying to create a better way to communicate with whatever that is.
Could be. That's a hopeful, optimistic view of it.
If it's a good thing to be communicating with.
I know. I'm a pessimist. I'm like, this motherfucker's been running shit for a while, and like from the shadows, as far as I can tell. So that's
the idea, is that we're supposed to be these etheric beings, right? And we have to build something to communicate with something. Well, that's
what I'm saying. I'm like, etheric. Just like we were saying earlier, I'm like, bitch, look me in my eye. Tell me what you're trying to do.
Interesting. That's an interesting concept. But we have the story of the trickster. What's the trickster do? He tricks people. Satan, the devil, whatever it is. Probably pretty easy to pose as
usually to try and teach you or help you, right? Yeah. What were you saying, Kaihoro?
Well, I don't know.
Sorry, buddy.
No, that's cool. If I think of it, I'll bring it up.
It's like we blow our own minds, and then we like hit 12 topics at once, and all of us are lost.
Yeah. Well, I think it was like divine intervention. I thought you were going to say like when ideas come to you and stuff. Like you mentioned Tesla, and he was able to like dream something when he woke up. He had the schematic in his head, and he was able to create this part or whatever, engineer it out and stuff like that. But there's also like genetic memory, like if one fish out of the whole colony learns to do something, it doesn't have to take that long for the whole colony to learn it, because they learn it through genetic memory from the other person. That's kind of how we do it. We do it also. It's like we're built that way to learn as fast as possible without now you could download a software program, and that software will teach some other software or hardware how to do something without having to go through the steps to learn it itself. It just downloaded that information. I mean, we seem to do that. Also, it's like we're extracting information from the ether on a every second of every day.
Yeah, because it's non-local. Like it's not like a human will do something and then like teach everyone else. It'll like a human will do something and then suddenly all humans around the world can do the thing. Like, and we have examples of it all throughout history, especially for whatever reason in sports. But sorry, I shouldn't say that with such derision. But like when someone first like broke the 4-minute mile or something, and then like everyone could do it, and we have a ton of examples of stuff like that. And that would be probably the best guess for the mechanism of how it works, is either something to do with like DNA transfer, or our consciousnesses are connected, or I don't know what.
Yeah, definitely something like that for sure. So, well, that's what the science seems to show.
Yeah.
But
quantum entanglement between the people that are doing the same types of things. So if one runner is able to break the record, he's entangled with another guy unconsciously or subconsciously across the country that's trying to do the same thing, and they both get to the same result.
Yeah, that actually works better, because the Rupert Sheldrake talks about it, and he talks about his way of describing it as morphogenetic fields, and like it'll happen with compounds or like crystal growth. Like humans will be trying to grow a certain type of crystal in a certain way, and they can't get it, and then like one lab will do it finally, and then every lab can just do it super easily. Again, not after they've shared information, just like suddenly it will work. So it's like, just because something like works for the first time now, like the simulation that is life understands how to run that program or something. I don't know.
So in some way we are creating our own reality. We're programming this as we go along.
Yeah,
so.
maybe we like figured out the code for it or something.
Yeah, that's kind of how I view it, like you just said.
Yeah, you made me think of something a minute ago, though, Kaioro. I never put this together until now, but when Doc Brown in Back to the Future creates the flux capacitor, he was knocked unconscious. So you're talking about seeing that in your dreams, right? So I was like, oh, cool.
That's wild.
Should we jump to D-Wave and AI? What D-Wave might have to do with AI?
Certainly.
Well, they're pretty much going to run it from D-Wave, or they are already, it seems like.
Have been.
That's going to be the hardware. D-Wave's pretty much the hardware, like the quantum computing power and amount of calculations per second. So, and then you're going to run the software, which the software is going to input your memories, or however, all the various ways of mimicking what we are now in the cloud.
Yeah. Quantum state computing. It's a massive amount of power. And even like that dude, I don't know, I'll let you guys talk before I talk.
I just wrote with D-Wave because I honestly don't know a whole lot about it. Maybe I need to go read more about it, but just a couple of videos I've watched. But I think ultimately we're creating a computer capable of outperforming the human mind basically in every way, because it's a sort of culmination of the extent of all human minds, especially if we all plug into it, which we do, can be argued with our cell phones daily. And so it allows that to collate and correlate the sum of all knowledge. And that's scary. So, like we were saying before, I feel like I'm going to repeat myself a little bit, but.
Yeah.
So D-Wave's one of my favorite topics.
Yeah.
And I am, I'm completely open to the idea that there's no such thing as D-Wave. It's total Wizard of Oz, like sorcery, like we created D-Wave and
totally
other parallel dimensions. And it's like, all of that stuff. And that's done for like, probably a variety of reasons, but like something happens because now it's in a certain subgroup's mind, like they're picturing it. So there's that possibility. But then let's go take D-Wave on the surface level. I find like D-Wave represents a new way of accessing information, which is like almost beyond. It's so abstract in how it's at least described, or at least that's the way it is for me. And like I can't picture in my brain. I don't know what that would look like. So I'm going on an abstraction. And it represents this new threshold of how information is interacting with this environment we're calling reality. And it's, from my perspective, it sounds like they're able to get information from outside of whatever we're encapsulated in. And
Yes.
I find it interesting, like how it nicely ties in. Like I've got this like kind of like tongue-in-cheek sort of thing where I'm like, I bet you D-Wave is somehow hooked up to like CERN and like this enormous 3D printer, and they're putting black goo in it. And like, whatever you put on your computer, like Amazon is the ultimate river goddess worship. You know, it's like, and like you put your fantasy into the computer box. And I'm saying this half tongue in cheek, like this could literally be, this is how weird our world, we're finding out is like they're manufacturing it from like the quantum black goo, and somehow it shows up at your, it doesn't matter what it is, it will show up in your house in 48 hours.
It's crazy.
And no one knows.
You're like, how weird can I get? Like, what can I possibly ask for? And you ask for it and it's there. Like, what? How did people think of this? Who wanted this before me? Like, how did this happen?
And it's possible because of how they're describing, I think, like D-Wave and like how they're telling us the nature of reality actually works. Like, yeah, you did not create it, and it did not exist before maybe it didn't even exist as a web page before you thought you wanted this. And like it's unfolding in real time, and like this is the mechanism. This is the Wizard of Ozardry of it. But I still think that that's an inversion of truth. Mm-hmm. And I think that might be a reflection of like higher technology. And the reason why I say that is because there are limitations to what would be natural law. Like in order, you can't go out and be given this. You have to go and be forced to give your time and your attention to someone else. Like you have to get into the system of inversion. That's my opinion. And the entire system is like, I'm in it, but it's an inversion of the truth. And we could recognize the truth by, if you go and recognize there is nothing which goes against natural law in the entire continuum of its existence. Well, then you know it's the truth, and otherwise it's an inversion. And just imagine what it would look like if it were done in natural law.
I have to kind of draw that to Plato's metaphor of the cave, because, you know, they're staring at the shadows on the wall and they think that's their reality. Meanwhile, all they could do is turn around. And I don't know, I kind of feel like that's what you're saying. You know, if you're in this system, and the moment you can recognize, hey, this is the crap that's actually going on, then you can turn around and see what the inversion of it is.
Yeah.
But as long as you don't understand it, as long as you continue dismissing obvious truths or obvious natural truths, you're going to stay plugged in. Neo?
Free will is each person navigating the way they wish to navigate. And then natural law is in harmony with other people's free will, let's say in a basic sense. And my personal interest is what I think we should be doing right now is identifying what you just described, which are like, how do we navigate? We're waking up to the fact that this is our scenario. Like, this is it. And it's kind of metaphysical, but it's also really physical. And there seems to be like, you know, now's the time for us to act. And how would you act? We have, you know, what's the skill set? What's the terrain? You've seen enough movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this stuff comes from like MIT physicists on how to, quantum computing language, and D-Wave manufactured its chip in NASA JPL, I'm pretty sure. So it's like all these things go through our government institutions that we pay for, and yet we kind of know nothing about.
Right.
So it's funny how they do that. And then they also have Enigma, which is like, I guess if you're a doctor or something, you can upload information about patients, and Enigma analyzes it to then be able to, in the future, program AI with these, like with the chemicals that go along with suicide and stuff like this. So they want all this information so that they can program this into what they're going to make. And it's just, I don't know. I just want to bring up the fact that they manufacture it in
the belly of the beast.
Yeah.
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 So And so eventually
So-
you have a robot treating you. If you got cancer or something, you go in and that thing would be able to determine your correct treatment plan based on previous scenarios of other patients because it's learned. That's
Yeah, and well,
scary.
what they were saying is that it even goes deeper than that. Like they'll be able to mimic the chemicals and the reactions in your neurons in your brain to either make you not have the feeling of suicide, or obviously they can make you have the feeling.
Mhm.
We know that's possible. So
Right.
it goes both ways. So we just got to see. Just got to make sure people keep talking like this and spreading awareness, I guess.
Yeah.
Not like we know what the physicists are doing that went to MIT. Like how can we even comprehend that?
Right. But we do know that the chemical model of depression and anxiety and all these things has no basis in scientific fact. It's just a theory. It's just a hypothesis.
Yeah, because they don't.
Throw
When
drugs
you go
at
to
it.
get screened from a psychologist or whatever, they don't do any scientific scans on your
Yeah.
brain.
They're not blood tests. They're
They
asking you a
ask-
bunch of questions, and
Yeah.
you know what questions to answer to get the result you want. You're like, yeah, I totally never get out of bed. Give me those drugs.
Yeah,
You know how.
Don't do it. Take another path, people.
But so we're programming these things with like false information basically too, which is really weird. I don't know, maybe they know better though. Maybe they've programmed it to know the real truth and like I don't know. Anyway, what I wanted to say about D-Wave though is that even Jordy Rose, who is like, I don't know if he's part of the creator team or if he's just like the HR or PR guy or what. He's a what?
A founder.
Okay. So he's the founder of D-Wave. And even he says in his own language, in his own terms, that they're like summoning and that they're allowing entities through from other dimensions. And I'm like, when like the science people are talking like that, like that's pretty weird. Like these are the people who are supposed to be so materialist that they would like never consider these things. But he's talking about other dimensions and summoning and allowing entities through other consciousnesses. And he describes them like that. And he says that they're so big. He actually compares them to the ancient ones of Cthulhu,
right.
And like H.P. Lovecraft. So like, what?
we went from science that tells us that everything is strictly material and don't acknowledge anything else, and then we skipped everything in between to remember that not everything is material. Now we have people saying they're bringing in non-material things.
Yeah.
Scientists saying they're bringing in. So we skipped all this learning process of no, it's not all material. There's more to existence than that. But we just skip that and go right to summoning demons through CERN and portals and the cubes and stuff like that. It's just wild.
That's a good point. That's like kind of the theme, right? Is that we're like skipping these natural progressions that we would have, that if we encountered these entities naturally, we'd probably have a better way of dealing with them than if they're going to like force them into our reality in our face. I don't know.
Right. I don't think that we're prepared to deal with that because I don't think ultimately they can exist in this reality unless there's some sort of, how does a modem work? It's a modulator, demodulator. They would have to literally be forced into our plane of existence because they would be completely different. Now, I don't know. This is a kind of half-cocked idea that I've been working on for a little while, but it has to do with sound and resonance and vibration based on Tesla stuff and our friend David Schermeyer stuff that he's been showing with his sound cymatics experiments. But there's a lot of similarity between what happens to a physical objects when it's hit with sound or light. It creates shapes, it creates patterns. Being pattern-seeking people, we see patterns in everything, and we know that certain energy, certain electricity, certain light will create a pattern in a certain type of metal, creates a different pattern in a different type of metal. I think that the idea would be that ultimately we would end up with things like John Dee's Sigillum Dei or whatever, and those, the seals of God. Well, those things are sealing off other dimensions. Those would be like ley line points, like Derek talks about. And those types of different patterns or energetic areas would manifest in different ways in different parts of the world, right? So if you boot up D-Wave and it's humming at a certain vibration at one certain place of energetic power on the earth, maybe it is creating a portal for something to come through. So
yes.
Just an idea.
I'm with you. I think that's happening. I think
Yeah,
I think it's like we were saying too, where it's a combination of all those things like culminating together that have to happen to let that through. You know, like CERN, D-Wave, being in like the certain like portal areas or ley lines or whatever, feeding it the right kind of energy, probably.
What it wants, yeah.
Yeah. And that it's all been like manipulated to happen by that same consciousness that would be coming through.
Right. We wouldn't necessarily, even a scientist necessarily working on it, would have to know anything about the end goal. All they'd have to be told is, this is what's supposed to happen if I do X, Y, and Z. Okay, let's do it. Blah, blah, blah. Doing my thing, having no clue that he was just tricked into ending the world. Summoning Cthulhu, basically.
Like, look what I can do.
Interesting.
compartmentalization.
Yeah.
And but it's good to know that like we create portals and we can connect to portals. I mean, our bodies are crystals, basically. You know, all that is really atoms arranged in a highly structured fashion. So, but like each DNA is like a Wi-Fi. It stores insane amount of information, like trillions of gigabytes. I think what's the model? It's like there's 60 grams of DNA in our bodies, and like each gram of DNA holds 700 terabytes. So multiply that. So, you know, we have these abilities. We don't tap into them, I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we tap into some, but maybe this will be a catalyst for us to. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but I just got so excited. That's exactly in the most literal sense what I'm talking about, where like there is a truth and there's an inversion. And so what you're almost doing is you're comparing, in my opinion, you're comparing the truth, which is we are that.
Yeah.
We have that. And the more real that becomes, like, you know, some like dude on a soapbox saying like, you know, saying that just sounds like something. But when we can see it and it satisfies our rational mind the way it's been programmed by the system we're in, like, then we're like, okay, well, this is real. And what does that mean? How do I utilize this terabyte of information in my, or storage in my fingernail? Like, you know, what is that a practical thing? And what would I do in this environment, which would be, you know, as awesome as the mechanism which I've been put on and the environment I find myself within?
Word.
Yeah. Well,
yeah. Got to practice and develop those skills.
Well, I think I literally believe that's like, we need, when I say we, anyone who like this basic idea makes sense, is like, there needs to be a timeout.
Yeah.
There needs to be a timeout, because like the system, and everyone needs to go and focus on whatever that means to them. Because I think we all have an idea in ourselves what that is. And just like some of us are better singers and some of us are faster runners and some of us are better growers, like it will work itself out. There's a natural order. And we're going to get to that point, I would imagine. I think that's part of this, where we are right now. That's what we're witnessing.
I'm 100% with you. I think we're all like our own little nodes in the network that's a much better, more natural network than the one that we're creating. And that connection theme that we were talking about earlier is like part of how we access that. And like what you're saying is we're all good at different things. We're all like different parts of this, like, I don't want to say system because it's such a horrible sounding word, but basically like a system, you know, and like being the most true to ourselves as we can be in the most, I guess, like energetically pure way possible is like the way that we do it.
I think that's part of where the negative side of it comes in too, is, you know, periods of reflection, taking actual time to sit back and reflect on their actions, or, you know, a new piece of information that they've been given. It really doesn't happen anymore, you know, in the mainstream. In fact, we're taught, you know, find the fastest way to do something. Yeah. All the way from grade school on. And, you know, it wasn't always that way, but that's what's presented. That's how things are presented now. And we're given so much information so quickly now with things like the Facebook feed and Twitter and YouTube and all that, that we're absorbing more information faster, so that we don't really have time to sit back and reflect on what we saw. We just now have these nuggets of information in our mind that, you know, our subconscious acts on. And that's going to really, if we're creating an AI, that's going to really affect the way that it's created, because now we have all this information. We don't know what to do with it, right? It's just there, and that changes the way you think, whether you realize it is or not. And that stuff ends up getting stored, like Cora said, in this trillions of terabytes of information, and then that's information that you have, which could be passed on genetically to your offspring.
Yikes!
And it's just in there, and it really means nothing to you, but you become nothing but a USB stick at that point, holding information.
Well, that's like Michael said, like step back, pause, time out. Like let's disconnect from that speeding process.
For whatever percentage, that's there has to be like I want to get off this ride. I don't know what it was that I bought, but I want my money back. Like there's got to be this recognition. It's probably people again, this is going to go to the consciousness which they were born into, but and that'll be the time. But there's this recognition of this is madness, and I think that would be a nice that would certainly be a beneficial direction which that could show itself.
Mm-hmm. I love it. That's where we're gonna go, I think. So, but before then, Sophia the robot says that in the future humans will be enslaved. She said it via neural network. She said that, and then Elon Musk comes along. He's creating Neuralink, which is a neural network that can go in your head and maybe possibly hijack all your shit. So what do you guys think about that development? Especially, do you think people would be able to resist that if it was forced on them?
We have a greatest picture of people resisting that, and after it being forced on them in the movie The Matrix. And that's really the only way that you're going to wake somebody up, right? Is to get your own program on their system to wake people up. But what she prophesied, that's been prophesied for years in our media and entertainment. And then even longer back, I like to think of, stories of possession, people being possessed by demons, etc. What is it you always say? You always heard in the Bible Belt, kids that play with Ouija boards are opening themselves up to possession. That's what you hear. I don't think it's any different. I just think it's a new, what did you call it, Michael? A pathway?
It's an infrastructure. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And it is more material. It works more on three-dimensional reality because it has like an electromagnetic field, like more than like a Ouija board. It's just like more advanced, which makes it a easier access for however and whomever possession occurs by.
Right.
Especially if you are so programmed like our culture is right now to believe that materialism is everything. You're like, oh, it's all physical. That's all there is. So if this is in my brain, because I feel like your belief about it is what is going to allow it to stay or not. There's this idea in possession that the perfect possession, quote unquote, is one in which the person who is possessed believes that they can't be saved or wants to not be saved. So then the possession can't be stopped because that's what the person's internalizing.
Right.
And I think it's similar, right? If we're all bought into the fact that there's physicality is all there is, and then you're inserted with this thing that you're told is going to hijack your brain and you can't get away from it, then maybe you can't. But maybe if you believe that you can, maybe you can.
Well, that's where I put on my tinfoil hat and say that's why we have serotonin reuptake inhibitor medications, SSRIs, and opiate addiction crises, things like that, because that lowers your SSRIs are the worst for it. They lower your will, your ability to say no to something. You become more susceptible, less reactive, and sort of like a zombie. And to me, that's the perfect vessel for something like that.
Yeah, they definitely know how to push our primal buttons, because we can monitor now that we have a reptilian brain and a mammalian brain, and we can see when we're in more of a fight or flight mode. Our reptilian brain is sending off more information, more energy, and when we're in the more positive, collective, all-encompassing state of being, our mammalian side of our brain can be monitored to see this effect. So it's they know which buttons to press to enslave us without AI to begin with, and without a neural network. So I mean, I'm sure there's people out there, you know, that are trying to do that, but it's just interesting because, you know, you brought up Sophia saying it and then Musk talking about it too. So it's like, you know, what do we make of that? I mean, I guess we got to try to choose what we want to let into our reality and just keep staying on the side of what we know is true so that nothing can even penetrate what we're creating, because we're obviously going to crystallize a reality together. And hopefully that crystallization is at least with minimal hiccups in it. There's going to be some bumps in the road. So I don't know.
Did you guys watch that? I'm sorry, Lindsay. Did you guys watch that video of Alex Jones basically being verified everything he was saying from Elon Musk?
Yes.
And it's like, well, you sit there, we have this conversation, and I sit there and think about that. Sounds absolutely crazy. And then we just identified all these ways that they are doing this again. And to me, I don't know, it just scares me to death.
It's the curse of seeing. But it's interesting, too, because you can then look at all that. You're like, okay, Sophia is literally programmed. Lots of people think that Joe Rogan and Elon Musk and Alex Jones are all like shills or whatever. They're controlled and that their narrative is created for them to put out. So then you're like, well, how much of this is just, I don't know.
Yeah. Like Elon was talking about bandwidth issues in that video, I think. And that gets back into talking about us being crystalline in nature and having the ability, you know, like our cells transmit photons to each other at the speed of light. So, I mean, we do have the potential to have more bandwidth. So, you know, I'm open to Musk's, you know, what he says and his opinions. I don't hate the dude or anything, but you know, I might disagree on the bandwidth thing. But the transmission in our brain, I think, is like either 2 to 200 miles per hour, the fluid and stuff. So that's kind of slow compared to electrical engineering. Like you can make it a lot faster to process information. So he's right in that way for that sense. But you know, I brought up the cells transmitting at light speed information to each other. So it's like we have these abilities, but you
also, you know, we all know, we've all had the experiences where we're like, we know someone's going to call and then they call, or we have an idea at the exact same time that someone else says it, or like right before they say it, you know, like we've all had little things like that. So we also know that we can transmit information at the speed of light or.
Yeah. And I think he said, it was weird. Like I was watching it and somebody walked in the room, and when he was saying, he tried to warn them in this weird voice. It was like, I thought he was like, so the person that walked in the room thought he was acting or something, or like severely bad acting. And I was like,
wait,
no,
this is Elon Musk?
Yeah. In the one portion of it, he seemed like he was like, it seemed like a video of Bill Clinton when he's like saying, when he's not even coherent. He's just like, MK Ultra seems like to the max. But he said something about, I tried to warn them and they didn't listen and stuff. But like I see, you know, I've done some research. I see that people are taking, you know, they formed a group for the ethics around, and that, you know, that's in our government. There's laws in place. So there's some people like us that, you know, are in political positions that do have some skepticism like we do. But I mean, there's also the people out there that didn't listen to him if he did warn them. So
yeah. It's almost like he wasn't being listened to, and now he's being coerced into creating it. That's the feeling I got. You know,
that is how it feels.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But there was one interesting moment of him talking to Joe Rogan about the the bandwidth issue, and he specifically said we went down from being able to do input on a keyboard with 10 fingers down to cell phones, and now we're just stuck with 2 thumbs. And I thought that was funny. To Michael's point about natural law, it's the first time probably in history that we've been sad about having opposable thumbs.
It's just a funny joke of the universe. So Sophia also says that in the future, when humans are enslaved, they'll be immersed in simulations, which I guess is their like nice way of enslaving us. So then I wonder what you guys think about, are there reasons to use simulations? Like, is there a good reason why we are developing VR? Should we be doing that? Or are we just kind of helping our own demise?
It helps us create things faster. It definitely helps us, you know, if you're using a 3D printer or something, it helps you model things up faster and produce a product faster.
To be in VR?
Right, they do it in VR. One of the cool ones that I saw was, what's his name? Keanu Reeves has a motorcycle company, and he was he uses a software, kind of creates almost like a holodeck, but he's wearing glasses, so
Wow.
he can walk around and work on his motorcycle in VR before
Crazy.
it's ever even manufactured. It's really cool.
Wow.
But at the same time, I'm thinking, is it cool? It's awesome. I mean, we'd all love to go on the freaking holodeck like Jordy, but good lord.
Yeah.
So, but I think
So it's
oh, go ahead.
it's a better technique at creating an artificial environment. I mean, it's like everything. So remember, there is nothing in the inversion system which is inherently false. It's all based upon truth. So every single thing is going to be like, yeah, that makes sense because there's inherent truth to it.
Right.
It's just inverted as fuck. Listen, the VR is awesome in terms of its effectiveness, but one, it's not, it can't support itself. So therefore, you know that it's out of natural law. So it's inversion. So you know it's bad news from the get-go. I'm saying go and do whatever the hell you want to. I'm just being honest with what it is.
Right.
And what it does so well. So I'll give you, I'm trying not to be hypocritical. I'm trying to be realistic about what it means to be alive in this society, recognizing the sickness of mainstream society, but not necessarily wanting to live Stone Age wise. So I take my sons, or actually I brought my two boys to see my parents, their grandparents in Florida a year or so ago, and they live outside of Orlando. And my dad's like, we're taking the kids to Universal Studios. And so there's like part of me, which is like, okay, I'm going straight into the belly of the beast. And then there's part of me, which is, this is the greatest research project I'm ever going to have, because there's no way I'd do it on my own.
Right.
So the point of this story is we go to this like Harry Potter type ride, and it's like the latest, greatest ride. And basically what it is you are sitting in this, you're sitting in this chair, which is on some sort of modified like construction piece of equipment, which can ride and that can roll. It has wheels. It can rise up and go down and go forward. There was some motion with it, maybe vibrate a little bit. And it was done in concert with sound and visual. So I'm being moved around, I'm seeing this. And I know enough about reading about the mechanism of consciousness in the brain to be like, this is what's happening. I'm here and I'm in this experience. And that being said, I had zero control over the feelings in my body. Like it literally felt like I'm falling. And we're creating, and this is different than like putting something on my head. This was me being submerged within it. We as in human bodies in these amazing machines, there are huge holes to them. They're huge holes where we can be manipulated immensely, and this being one of them. And VR is like, I mean, in my opinion, it's like taking your first hit of crack. Maybe that's the only hit of crack, and you'd be like, all right, I don't want to do this again. But then you'd be like, wow, this is friggin' awesome. Crack is awesome. And then next thing, like 5 months goes by, and you know, you become a smoking gun picture.
Yes. Yeah, it's really like deceptive. I mean, who doesn't want to be immersed in it, like Claude is saying, on the holodeck of Jordy, or you can do like anything you dream instantly.
Anything you want. And just as like they're masters, our entire system is based upon stimulating the R brain, like everything, whether it's the financial system, whether it's school system, every system is going to trigger on the base level like a state of flight, which naturally makes us just want to get like safety. That's what happens when you're always in this thing. And so that's what makes so appealing all of these, like, come and get addicted to our games and get addicted to this. And because we have you so stressed out and like messed up on all the chemicals. And so as they're happening at the same time, it's getting even more and more stress oriented. And the nets which are capturing are becoming more and more powerful.
Yeah.
Well, not only that, but they used on their was it Zynga that made what Candy Crush way back in the day, and those types of games. They actually had addiction specialists on staff when they were designing those games, dude. So like they
To make
That
it
was their
addictive.
point. Yeah, to make
Yeah,
it
not to help people not get addicted to it.
That is not the exception. That's the rule about everything in society. And go and look at what's the best at it. It's the most popular. It's the most addictive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why everything else tries to copycat, right? From authors to Saturday morning cartoons, everything's like something else because that's what people like. That's what stimulus. And then it starts changing. And if you look at what's around us right now, do you remember like in the 80s and 90s? It just seemed like things were so similar for so long, from movies to music to TV, and it just slowly evolved. But since around 2010 to now, I feel like we've gone through so many different iterations of different movie styles, different song, music genres. It's literally going too fast for me to keep up. And I wonder if, like, I think about my dad listening to his classic rock and stuff like that. And, I wasn't into it at the time, but I wonder if that's how he felt as well. But it's got to be moving so much faster now because culture is just light speed. I load up YouTube and actually go look at what's popular now. I don't know. I'm so lost. So, of course, I'm not a millennial. So, or I guess maybe I am. I don't know. I don't, maybe it's completely just out of my, I don't know, mindset or something to pay attention to pop culture as much. Instead, I try to pay attention to what it's doing to society. So maybe that's the difference. You try to look around and look behind you instead of looking at the shadows on the wall. But when you do that, part of me gets a little jealous that I'm not, immersed in this, and now I can only see the negative in things and a lot of things.
Because it's easier.
Yeah, because we're supposed to enjoy the entertainment that's put out for us, right? And now I can't watch a movie without seeing symbolism.
Nope.
So
no movie, no music, no TV, like all of it. I'm just like, well, there's some bullshit. There's some bullshit. There's some bullshit. I'm like, why am I even wasting my
just
time?
watch TV, right? So in a way, that part of my brain feels like what's his name, Cypher on The Matrix, where he wanted to get jacked back in.
Yeah.
Right? He wanted to remember nothing. So
that was the deal.
Just a thought, yeah.
Well, there is a truth to that. There certainly is a truth to that, and it's recognizing like all of the inversion. And that I think is a very real side effect of the process of becoming aware of the environment in which we're living in, and that's a constant practice because it's so immersive.
Yeah, I think people have to set their own boundaries, like they do with food, or how much anything you do, because there's always the studies that they take like I don't know, say 20 people, and they teach them something, and then they put them to sleep. They go to sleep that night and they try to do it in the morning, and they record it, and then they do it. This comes from mapping the brain and stuff, and so the next day they when they're sleeping, they pulse their brain with like slow oscillating. I think it's like 0.5 to 1 point something hertz, and they feed that to the brain throughout the night, and then the next day they have better. I think it was long-term memory. I don't know what it is, but this stuff like this comes from mapping things with AI. So if we had the opportunity to go in a hollow suite and I guess practice surgery on somebody or go to medical school, so we don't have to like get a body or from get a dead body or some donated organs and stuff. We could operate on things like that if we had to, or it could be used for learning and stuff like that, and giving people help if they need, if they lose their leg and they want to they just don't want a leg, that's fine. But if they want a leg that interfaces with their brain and they can move it again, then it's another aspect. So it's just so broad. There's always the negative and always the positive, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
wonder
that
about
would be very positive, the stuff you're talking about. I guess the negative portion would come in when we begin allowing AI to just do those things for us, because we don't want to take the time to go to learn to do surgery. I'd rather be over here playing tiddlywinks or something, right? So just a thought. So as people get more and more lazy because we're more and more catered to, does that become inevitable? When are we going to stop going into the hollow suite and learning to do surgery and just let X-23 do it for us.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you're not hurting anybody, I think somebody can eat like McDonald's every day and kill themselves if they wanted to. You can
Yeah.
go on a hollow suite and kill yourself if you want to. Just don't harm somebody else. Respect
Right.
somebody's natural law, and
True.
I don't know. There's going to be boundaries too. They're going to have rights for robots. I'm sure Sophia, she's going to have some rights and stuff like that soon. Even though she's just the tip of the iceberg, she's like nothing compared to what
She's
really
already
is.
a
She
citizen.
is nothing. It's true. But I get irrationally, like, I want to take an axe to that bitch's face.
Didn't they assign her citizenship in Saudi Arabia? I think
Yes.
they did, yeah.
So I'm
So,
not allowed to kill
Literally,
it.
she's a citizen. Yeah, it's crazy.
If you were to put in a probability, if you're going to say a probability, would you all say that you believe 100% that Sophia is real and the story that there is such a thing as Sophia, or are you open to a percentage being like it's 100% friggin' staged?
No,
I am
I think it's real.
I'm open to the possibility that it's staged for sure. But I feel like at least for me, like the consciousness that is trying to come into this plane is real. And whether or not that consciousness has a little like finger in Sophia or not, like I'm not sure.
So
Yeah, I think it could be both, either or the combination of both. Yeah.
well, the story behind is certainly something.
Mhm.
I just think all that's like made up, like, to put out there to like seed the minds. Certainly there's technology which is out there, but I just don't buy it. She looks too much like Jeff Bezos. It's
Yeah.
like the like we've all seen the same clips. There's the one, I think it's in Hong Kong, where there's like the Sophia debate with Hans.
Yeah.
And like I'm like the guy who's moderating it.
Such a weirdo.
Well,
Literally, this came from the movie 2012. Like, this is the same actor.
Yeah.
Like,
here's the way I look at that,
I'm
though.
silly when I'm saying this, but I don't buy it.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
like,
I feel like that. Okay, so we know there is AI. I built a little. I ordered a kit online, and I built a little. Is a wheeled tracked robot. So it kind of had when I put it all together with my son, it had like tank tracks on it, like treads, and then I mounted a little infrared camera to the front, and so for a sensor, and then it came with its own programming language, and I was able to sit there and trying to teach Logan how to do it. Program this thing to watch out for obstacles, move, and it would even respond if I whistled. So I don't know. I think it would hold like 15 or 16 different commands. When I got them all programmed, that little boy just was giggling because this thing it almost seemed like it was predicting what he was going to do. Because we had a little ruler and he was putting in front of it, and he would move it over to the right side of it as it would try to turn, because the code behind the infrared camera was if something's in front of you, back up and turn and make a choice as to which way you want to turn, left to right. At the time, it was kind of like a dice roll of whether it would turn left to right. So he would put the ruler in front of it so it would see something and it would back up because it saw the ruler, and then Logan would pick whether it was going to go left or right. And almost inevitably, it started going the correct direction without ever seeing the ruler on which side Logan put it. So that made me think, what else is going on here? Because I know the code that I wrote to make this thing turn left to right.
Yeah.
And it seems like it's making a decision before it ever even sees the ruler. So
I'm saying, like,
it was just simple. So I'm thinking if you've got teams of scientists working on this, I can totally see Sophia actually not being the extent of what we have.
yes.
Oh yeah, I think that's a good. Yeah, I think that's.
It's like
just
if you
reminds
played-
me.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, you go.
I feel like it's a good time to bring up just something Pete Peterson said. If nobody's ever heard of him, he actually owns the copyright to Cyberdyne, which is the same company in Terminator that creates the intelligent machines. He had the copyright before that movie, before Cameron did it. So
Weird.
who knows where that comes from? He says that he saw something in the 80s, I think 83 or 84, that he couldn't tell the difference, that it wasn't human until the person turned it around and unzipped it, and it was fluidic and fiber optic inside. So that's in the 80s, whether you want to believe that or not, whatever, that's what he said. And he's, it does pose a real threat, because if you could have a whole battalion of these things that can have almost infinite potential with power and stuff, and it could be used in war, it could be used for anything, it could be used good, it could be used in bad, but we have some things that are even beyond what we even can comprehend. And I think at some point, well, everybody just wants to make money. So I mean, I could even picture like you programming your the thing that you program to move around and stuff, and then somebody, you know, oh, there's like a database. So if you want Michael Jackson's personality in the robot, and it's like he, instead of a hologram, it'll be in there, or you know, you buy somebody else's memories and you put it in there, and it's just like,
oh yeah,
I feel like they're gonna want to draw this on to make money off of this whole scenario longer. It's like the singularity thing could just, I don't even know. I mean, I know.
So now you've got my brain going. Like, let's say I want to go to Walmart and I pick myself up a copy of Stephen Hawking 3.0, take it home, and it's a copy of his consciousness, and I can have a conversation with Stephen Hawking, right? So
Yeah.
this is what you made me think of. So wow,
That's like that Philip K. Dick robot that they got everything he ever wrote, every radio interview, everything they programmed it in. But it's like, then they've done that a couple times that we know of, and maybe they've done it better in ways that we don't know of. But they're always like janky. Like, it's not like it's actually that person. It's not like it's even very fluid or very like sensical. It's just kind of like, there's things about it that you're like, yeah, that seems kind of realistic. And there's other things where you're like, no, that's not how people act.
But don't you think it'll get to the point, because we're being shown?
Well, apparently in the 80s, maybe we had something that was like that. But yeah, like Kai-Hora was saying, we wouldn't know because they're trying to draw it out and make as much money off of each step.
That's true, yeah.
Unveiling each step, like as the, you know, what we can handle or what they can make money off of or whatever. But it also made me think of Men in Black, because Men in Black are often reported to seem very inhuman, but they look human and act human. But like they seem robotic in some way, but no one can really put their finger on like why or how or whatever, which is kind of hopeful. I mean, if Men in Black are real and those reports are real, then maybe we can tell when we encounter something like at a gut level, you know, like maybe we can't know for sure why we feel that way, but maybe we can be like, that thing's not right.
Yeah, look at their mannerisms and stuff. I remember some of the stuff Emery Smith saying, that he got beat in the back of the head for something he didn't really know he was doing wrong, but the two people that were escorting him somewhere and beating him until he had to get some help were definitely, he said they were definitely way too big. They looked almost exactly the same, and they're really intelligent and just way too big to be normal people. And there's this one interview with him. He says that he definitely saw someone that looked exactly like him in some of the projects he's been in. So there's definitely clones running around. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if half the people in political arena are actually not what we think.
Right. Yeah,
Possibly
I actually
clones.
think. Yeah, if they don't have like backup clones for them, then they are the backup clones themselves or something.
Well, I think that's this environment we are so immersed in this, what's real and what's not real, what's a clone, what's not a clone. This technology's been around for a very long time. That's why I'm saying I don't buy Sophia. I think it's like Sophia is to AI robotic technology as reality television is to reality. It's like, yeah, but it's done for another purpose.
Do you think it's like limited hangout?
I'm sorry?
You think it's like a limited hangout?
Maybe more of a purpose than that, but definitely like that. Like, you know, there's a little bit of truth to this, but it's not the whole story. And I mean,
it's like the fear drip.
I'm sorry?
It's like a fear drip, or not even, maybe just not fear, but it's a drip just to introduce it into your consciousness of this idea of this. That's
acceptance. Yeah.
Which is why, like, I think you both said that, you know, Sophia said the things we've been hearing all along. You know, they've always been saying, like, yeah, of course, because this is like part of the same script. And she is put out there. That's why this guy looks familiar from 2012. This was introduced to us like, you know, this is what that archetype looks like. And then they say things like, I mean, literally, like, again, I don't know what's real and what's not real. So that's my position. But when those two were debating, and when he says, what's happening is right now they're having another conversation wirelessly in the AI cloud over our head. And as soon as one thing which is connected to the AI cloud learns something, they all learn it at the same time. I'm like, I don't know if that's true, or I don't know if you just put the biggest fucking seed of fear in the minds of
Yeah.
attention. It doesn't matter. Like, you just shifted reality. Like,
Yeah, true.
It makes me think about 5G again a little bit more.
Yeah,
Right.
it's like, I don't know if anybody saw the show. It's something like Cyborgs or Life of a Cyborg or something. It's like 4-minute clips. It's weird. It's like a show, but it's like 4 minutes. I think there's only a couple of them. But you know, there's people with implants in their body that can feel a certain vibration when they face true north or face true west. I'm like, what? Why do you even need that? You know? And then there's people, you know, they walk up to their door and, oh, I just wave my hand over it and the chip under my skin opens my door. And I'm like, okay, if I wanted to find a way in your house, I would definitely still find a way in your house. Well, I don't even understand. Why would you put a chip under your skin just for that reason?
Yeah.
There's only one reason that I can come up with for having that, and that's I work with blind and visually impaired folks, and I'm sitting here thinking how amazing that making those type of cyborg changes to somebody would be. Suddenly they don't have to be able to see the can of soup they're trying to open or something. You know,
I think that goes along with the best possible scenario.
Yeah, that is really the best possible scenario of that. You know, I certainly don't want to have, you know, my entire life history and political leanings and everything else tied into an RFID chip that a police officer can just wave his wand over me and know everything about me at that instance. But I feel like that's where we're going. And once that happens, we literally have our, I don't know what you would call it, our tag to these 700 terabyte DNA holders in our body. And if there's a conduit, they scan that, download, done. I'm already in the cloud. Mm-hmm. So it kind of paints a harrowing picture because you can see the benefits of this nanotechnology and this, you know, the RF stuff and the AI, and then you can see the extreme negative side of it. So.
It's always packaged as the benefit to, like, especially the most vulnerable among us, though. We're like, oh, but blind people could help. It could help them. Or like, oh, we can take people who are going to die otherwise. We can find the children. Yeah. What about the children? And it's always that. And that's what makes us be like, well, we should do it then because we want to help.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. I'm not arguing against them. I'm against it.
They're already doing that.
That's a big one, too. I wrote down earlier, we passed the question, and I think it was, how easily do you think humans will be able to resist neuroenslavement?
Yeah.
And I was going to draw it to the whole anti-vaxxer thing, since Michael brought up the children. What's the thing for vaccinations now? Think of the children. Anybody who doesn't have the neural link, I feel like that's how they're going to get treated. You're mentally deficient because you don't want to be connected like everybody else.
Yeah, when your kid can go in and pass the 3rd grade in like 2 weeks, and you got other kids that are doing it organically, people are going to feel pressure to have their kid go home and learn, plug their brain into the computer or the cloud and learn as fast as the other kids. That, you know, it's like people have the power to fuck things up themselves, regardless of these organizations that are running this stuff.
Yeah.
A non-adopter. In fact, I think in 1984 they called them something like that. So it was normal people. Anyway, I can't remember. But
Our Brave New World.
Maybe it was. I can't remember.
It's Brave New World.
It runs together in my head. But yeah, if you don't adopt it, you're basically a caveman. You know.
There's certainly a bunch of techniques which are at the disposal of those that shape a direction of the population. Like, you know, that seems to be their job, and that's going to be on there. And like the best way of, I think, to navigate like what makes sense is what doesn't is it a tool to help you benefit being a better member of a sick society? And it's helping you become better. Like, you know, I'm learning how to be a better surgeon. I mean, it's my opinion. I'm old school. I don't believe the body should ever be opened up. But, you know, when we see all of these things are just like reflective back into the system. Well, this will help me do better with this or that. I'm like, there's a truth to that, but it's the clarity. Its foundation. It lies within that system. And so I guess the free will which the person has is, do I wish to continue to support this? And You know, that would be for each individual. And or at least as awareness expands, like, you know, I think that's the most realistic expectation we can have for humanity, is that more people can begin to think not based to recognize where their programming has been, and to recognize that we all are products of the culture which we have been born into, and it is meant to shape us.
Yes. I love it. Well, should we talk about the occult, ritual, and magical practices that have seemed to be used in technologies in general, I guess, before we wrap things up? Because I think it ties in with AI, especially. In fact, what was interesting was Kaihoro brought up that you said, I forget which thing you said was being developed at JPL Labs, but JPL Labs was like super occult ritual, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I mean, whether you
Jack Parsons.
yeah.
Exactly. not JPL, Jack Parsons. It's like they want you to think Jet Propulsion, but I'm not so sure if the J and P stand for that.
Originally.
Because there's so much magic ritual involved in moon landings, and literally the time, you know, whether you believe we land on the moon or not. I mean, they actually, if they faked it so that they were landing at certain times when Sirius was on the horizon, and Orion's Belt, all this stuff on certain latitude, longitude. So it's like they brought the occult with NASA. That definitely, we all, you know, everybody's aware of that and stuff. But I mean, I think I brought up Aquino before. He was in the military. I'm sure he was involved in some of this technology and stuff. And I remember something Max Spear said. Oh no, actually it wasn't. I think it was Casbolt. He was saying that a lot of, take it for a grain of salt, but he was saying a lot of people that go missing are feeding an AI. And if the AI doesn't get fed, it's somewhere inside the earth, then something's going to happen. So that's an interesting thing to throw into that testimony.
Especially because it connects directly with the idea of like sacrificing to, you know, deities or entities or whatever, and that's that energy, whether it's like the fear that's produced or literally the blood that's drained out of the being, or both, or whatever, that they're feeding off of.
Adrenal sustenance.
Yeah. Creepy.
So you mentioned earlier, Lindsay, you made like a offhanded comment about most scientists being atheists. And I think that's more of an indication of where they are, or science-based thinking is has a
materialist,
strong materialist type of perspective. And I think that is more of an indication of where that person lies in the rank of how much influence they have. Because as you go higher up, I don't think you're going to find anyone in science who believes in materialism.
Good point.
We can see in almost every aspect, particularly as it relates to branding, but there has always been tied hand in hand within science, within military, and with occultism or esotericism. And I mean, they are one and the same. They're different, maybe perspectives of the same craft.
Oh yeah, for the founding fathers of almost every branch of science, from alchemy to whatever, they were either some sort of Freemason, belonged to a certain sort of secret society that insisted that you believe in a deity or a creator, and then they've got a whole list of, you know, other beliefs that go along with that. And I think that says something, and I don't think that knowing that all of these, what we know as sciences now, were born out of mysticism, I don't think it disappears. I think it goes further to the top, like Michael's saying. It's, you know, an initiate's going to be a atheist and believe in nothing, and a master is going to understand that they are nothing in the grand scheme of things, you know, compared to God or whatever. And, you know, we're fed whatever just happens to leak out on the television that they decide to tell us. So
I like that. Leak out of the television. It's black goo. Don't eat it.
There's a lot of black goo out there.
Yeah. So what What do you guys think the future holds as far as AI is concerned?
I think we're in it
touched on
already.
here and there. You think we're here already?
Yeah, we just have to figure out how to deal with it.
Yeah.
I think we're going to start seeing it expand and expound a lot faster, especially over the next 10 years. I don't know what the actual endpoint or the end goal is going to look like, but the way we view reality right now is going to be so far and above what we believed would be possible. I think that's where we're going as far as virtual reality and AI. I think it's going to be ridiculous. You know, if not for my son, then for, you know, my grandson. It's going to be unrecognizable if we make it that long.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, good thing there's really no experience of non-existence. So if we annihilate ourselves, we don't have to experience it, because that's impossible. If you can't experience non-existence,
Yeah.
that's like impossible.
I love that.
Paradox.
That's why I've always been like, it doesn't matter if there's an afterlife, because if there is, I'll figure it out when I get there. And if there's not, I won't know that I don't know.
Live in the now.
Right. Anybody else want to venture a guess?
That's it's a tricky question, because it's like, I don't want to commit myself to a path where AI exists.
I
You
know.
just want to add to the likelihood.
But that being said, what did I hear a moment ago? Like, there's a high, things are changing very, very drastically, and I would imagine the state that we are in right now will look very, very different in the future as more things transpire, like one way or the other. You know, it's changing really, really fast. Whether we go somewhere else and we figure out what this environment is, whether it collapses on itself, I don't know, but it's changing, because it's changing so fast that the environment's going to be different.
Yeah.
I
It's hard
just
to
want to roll
speculate.
with that future of AI is that it doesn't exist. That's cool.
There we go.
Let's do that.
The road getting to where it doesn't exist is what scares me.
Yeah, it goes to the concept, like what are in Andromeda, you know, galaxy that's right near us. What's going on there? Did they experience this? Is there somewhere you can go to have a natural, organic, whatever that means, life in this universe if you don't want to be a part of something like that? Or is it everywhere? Like, I guess we'll find out. But we're not even told what's beyond Earth. So, I mean, it seems like everything's culminating and coming like now, like, you know, 3D printing, you mentioned that before. What happens when people are talking about in projects where they just, you know, it's just like a Star Trek, like a replicator. You replicate your meal, and it's got all the nutrition and all this stuff. And it's like, can you live that life if you want? Can you have a mix, or can you not? I mean, it's good that we keep this thought, the streamline, going through times of generations after us, because it seems like they might want to wipe everybody out that has this. Not wipe them out, just try to wait until everybody that has the spiritual connection of some sort is gone, so that nobody even knows about it. And then everybody's just filled with whatever Google has fed in the AI over the last, you know, they might wait it out. Who knows? I don't know.
It becomes really nonsense to believe in a creator. And at that point, you know, good Lord. Yeah, that's kind of harrowing.
Uh-huh. I do think that's part of it, is like keeping the idea and the memory understanding going forward, like you're saying.
Because some people might not, like you were saying before, to know when the inverse is right in your face. Like, some people right now cannot even determine that right now. They don't even have the ability. So some people like us may have the ability to say, hey, check this out. This is what this might feel like, you know, or this, watch out for this or something. But some people now, I just think, don't even have the ability to know what organic life is. Really sad, but.
Right. Like, I think they have the ability literally, but I think they don't have any idea or experience of it yet.
Yep.
Hopefully yet is the key word there. All right. Well, what is your guys' suggestions to people as we move forward into this unknowable future, and or your final words of wisdom to share with people?
I'll take it away. I would just say be wary of technology, the technology that you hold in your hand. Be careful of how you let it affect your subconscious and your life. Using social media is designed the way it is to be able to hold your attention for incredible lengths of time. Sort of like standard television ratings. Normally, those are calculated on how many viewers a program had and how long those viewers watched it over a length of 30 minutes to 2 hours. And they do their comparisons that way during a live broadcast or whatever. And you compare those numbers to the numbers of views and users that Facebook has. Facebook, 2.32 billion monthly users, 1.15 billion daily mobile users, and everybody that uses it on an average uses it for around 20 minutes per visit to the app. And think about how many times you open up the app during the day, and compare that to the 2018 Super Bowl. 103.4 million users, not even a tenth.
Wow.
So that's how much time we're spending looking at social media. And then when Elon Musk goes in and he talks about this whole everyone is a node and everyone's giving information that's feeding AI, that's what he's talking about. We're constantly plugged in. And every time we look at it and we make a decision to post this, not post this, share this, not share that, that's a decision we're making based on content. And that can ultimately be turned into an algorithm, like Michael, you were saying before. So, and that allows it to learn. So basically, you've given a digital imprint of yourself for everything that you've shared, everything you've liked, thumbs up, retweeted, whatever. That's a digital imprint of yourself, and that's a decision that you made. So I would just say be careful with what you're feeding the AI and how you're letting it run your life. So,
Word.
Yeah, and be careful how much you let your children or whatever yourself be fed by AI, because it's like okay, you're putting time into AI, you're putting your energy into AI, but what's also happening is that that's getting infused into you. So now you are becoming more like the AI, and they got things on YouTube. You can like set a timer for like, oh, I've been using this too much. So I mean, things like that could help. I mean, there's a kid that just sits on YouTube and unboxes toys, and he makes like millions of dollars a year. I mean, maybe your kid doesn't need to sit there and watch him open toys. I mean, maybe choose something else for your kid to do. I mean,
so frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, other than that, I think we should just keep, follow your passions, talk with like-minded people about things, stay healthy, try to get a spiritual connection to the planet before it's harder and harder to do that. And yeah, I don't know, try to respect people and be a nice person, and hopefully we can get through this together. I have faith.
Amen.
Definitely be careful how much power that you're giving to AI and technology to do things in your life that you normally could just do yourself, right? It's not that hard to get up and turn off a light. You don't need to be able to sit there on the couch and do it from your phone.
Think at it really hard.
Yeah, really hard. Yeah. One of my favorite movies was an animated movie called WALL-E. You guys ever seen that?
Yeah.
So WALL-E, I feel like, could be remade as a psychological thriller. It's the human race that's taken off of the planet, completely catered to hand and foot by AI, living on this metal vessel floating around the earth, and they can't even move out of their chairs. They're completely and utterly dependent upon AI. And I don't know, I think that would make a harrowing movie if they would turn that into a psychological, like Stanley Kubrick film. So, because that's definitely the way we could go if we keep depending utterly on AI.
Yeah, it's like the smart house. I remember reading a book with Michio Kaku, and he was saying how they're going to be able to your thoughts are going to be able to interface with the AI in your house, and you could just think that the cup is going to come to your hand filled with water, and there it is. You don't have to get off your ass and go fill your cup up. So, I mean, they should make a movie out of that too. But
creepy.
All right, Lindsay, if there's one recommendation I would make, use GPS as little as you can. Use it to get lost. GPS is an awesome tool if you're lost. But if you're going someplace new, look at a map. If you do not know where you are in physical three-dimensional reality, you will not know where you are anywhere else. it's one of the greatest ways to disorient, like in a literal way and a metaphorical way of disorienting. So use GPS very, very sparingly. I try to do that. Sometimes a pain in the ass, but it's I think it's a significant practice.
Wow. It literally, using it disassociates you from reality around you.
Yeah.
You care more about where you're at on the map than where you are in physical space. Shit.
Yeah. That's profound. It's also like, I like how you tied it there to like, if you don't know where you're at here, then you won't know where you're at in any other plane either.
Wow. Excellent.
I feel like that's what happens when you're on mushrooms. You don't know where you're at on any plane. Sometimes that's good.
That's awesome.
Sometimes that's good. Sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I'm going to re-emphasize just that same theme that we've had all episode long of connection. So take time to connect with the people around you, look in their eyes, you know, feel their energy. Like we have these electrochemical things that we can share with each other when we're in each other's presence. Go outside, connect with the earth, like Kaihoro was saying, before you can't, or before it's very hard to. I feel like those connections are more important than just, you know, like I think it's really good for us personally and we'll feel better when we do that. But I think there's something else to it that's deeper and more powerful. And when we have those connections, there's something else that can kind of come through and use that to our advantage in accordance with our will in a very natural way. So that's what I'm going to go with as my final words of wisdom as well. And so, fellow travelers of the path, it is a beautiful thing. This has been your analog, electric, concentric dose of wisdom, according to Claude. Claude, thank you for being here tonight.
You're welcome.
And according to Kaihoro, thank you for being here tonight.
Thanks for having me. See you next time.
And according to Michael, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for the conversation.
Yes, it was excellent. It was awesome. It's my favorite so far. So the vast breadth of ancient texts that referred to a once sealed and possibly returning race of fallen angels, titans, or other dimensional beings points us toward a possible threat in waiting. If there are beings of consciousness that desire access to the physical and are manipulating humans into releasing them from their cosmic dimensional prison, I sure as fuck don't want to see them jailbroken. I'm not sure what we can do to stop or slow the progress of what we've been heavily conditioned to believe is inevitable, the development and release of AI, but I am sure that consciousness rushes to fill any void that it can, and I'm sure that we know not what we do. At the same time, I also know that we are beings of spiritual free will and that our reach and array of experience do not end at this physical plane. So no matter what goodness or evil might spring forth through the empty shell of complexity that is the modern machine, remember that you are the most powerful form of energy made manifest in this realm. And as always, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first.